Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of 19NTC. You know what that is. It's the 2019 Nonprofit Technology Conference. You know that we're in Portland, Oregon at the Convention Center. All of our 19NTC interviews are brought to you by our partners at ActBlue, free fundraising tools to help nonprofits make an impact. With me now are Sara Kerrigan, seated next to me, email director at ActBlue, and Carrie Mann, deputy director of digital membership and advocacy at Friends of the Earth. Carrie, Sara, welcome.
Thanks.
Carrie, Sara, I looked the wrong way. Welcome to both of you. Welcome to Nonprofit Radio. Okay, your topic is the largest group of untapped charitable givers, small dollar donors. Sara, what do you feel like nonprofits don't fully appreciate about small dollar donors? Why do we need this session?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important. I would actually say that nonprofit, they actually do really appreciate small dollar donors that I've seen. And really, our goal of the presentation was just to empower nonprofits to take the case to their boards or their directors and say, like, hey, this is actually like a really good use of fundraising. And it's also a really good way to engage people and move their mission forward. Sometimes it just takes somebody to really like dive deep into email and to dive deep into those fundraising strategies for people to feel empowered to take that business case, straight to their organizations.
Okay, Carrie. So I assume you're working with ActBlue.
Yes, we are.
Okay, were you the person that Sara was just referring to, who went to your leadership and said this is worth investing in?
That was before my time.
That was before you. Okay, but it's carried on.
Yeah.
Okay, so glad that your predecessor did that. All right. So where's the best place to start? If we don't feel we are capturing all our potential in small dollar donors, what's the first thing that we need to have in place before we can be effective with a campaign?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So actually, email is the driver, or the vast driver of all contributions. So really, all you need is an email program and an email list, and just a message, and you can easily write your own emails and send it out to your audience. Of course, you can use an ActBlue link if you so choose. But yeah, it's really, really easy to tap into small dollar donors. Really, all you need is an email address and names, and then you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, you don't have to screen for who the best prospects are?
Well, no. I mean, there's other different acquisition strategies that you can absolutely use. But if you're just starting from ground zero, like really all you need is an email list, an email address, and then you can get started with your own fundraising.
Okay. All right. And Carrie, how successful has this been at Friends of the Earth?
It's been huge for our program as a whole. When I first started at Friends of the Earth, we had about 250,000 people on our email list, and it was raising a pretty negligible portion of our budget. Oh. Now we have about 1.8 million people on our list, and it's raising over $2.5 million a year.
Oh my! All right. That's explosive.
Yeah.
How do we define? Well, does the definition of small dollar donation vary from organization to organization, or you feel like it's all pretty consistent? Like, we're talking like $15, $20, $25. Is that what Friends of the Earth? Is that how you define small dollar when you have these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, really, we aren't going to turn down a $1,000 contribution if somebody wants to do that online. But for the most part, we're seeing people giving in more of that $30 to $50 range online, and just giving sometimes more than once a year, 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
And yeah, at that lower dollar level.
Okay. All right. So, Sara, I have small dollar on my T-shirt. Well, how does ActBlue define what's on my T-shirt?
Yeah, sure. So a small dollar donor is somebody who makes a contribution of $250 or less. That's pretty much the standard that we use. But basically, the whole goal about engaging small dollar donors is that it goes beyond raising money. I mean, these are people who are marching, they're protesting, they're volunteering, and they're really pushing nonprofits' causes forward. And that's really the message that we want to drive home, that it's just like, it's not just about like fundraising. It really is about building a movement, a powerful movement of people. And usually that massive movement of people that we see are small dollar donors because they're the most engaged.
Okay. In your session, you talked about some basic principles of running a sustainable small dollar program.
Right.
So let's start with you, since we're stay with you, I should say. Let's get us started with some basic principles.
Yeah, sure. The number one thing is just treating your supporters with respect. I mean, we live in a world right now where there's just so much content. Like, we are saturated with content, especially as Carrie and I are both email professionals. It's just so important to really look at your email program and say, like, we really should choose to treat donors with respect. There's a lot of email programs out there that kind of focus solely on fundraising and bottom line. And our position is we really need to build like a sustainable program, again, where we just create content where people feel like, they want to be on the email list and they want to donate and they want to give and they want to give their time, money, and energy towards the mission.
How do we show that respect?
Well, there's lots of different ways.
Let's dive in. Don't hold back on nonprofit radio listeners.
Yeah.
How do we show it? Tick off a couple ways.
Sure. So being honest with people about why you're asking them to give money is very important. I'll use an example about recurring donations. Something that we have found really successful is when we just ask people like, hey, can you give a monthly $3 donation to support our cause? A lot of people shy away from that because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm asking somebody to give $3, $5, $10 a month. That seems like a pretty big ask. But really just being honest and upfront about what you're doing and why it's important is super important. Also being timely, being relevant to the moment is super important. People want to be engaged, and people really want to hear from your organization right when the moment happens. Thinking about family separation at the border, there were just so many people who wanted to be involved, and so having a way to talk directly to supporters is really important. So I would say honest, timely, and of course you need to add value too. I mean, your email program, it's definitely a two-way street, right? We're not just sending mass email just to fundraise. It really has to add value to the supporter, and the supporter has to feel engaged into your mission, and that's another great way that email serves that purpose.
Okay, yeah. What does Friends of the Earth do, Carrie, to show this respect that Sarah's talking about?
Yeah, so if you think about what motivates a small dollar donor to give, it's not necessarily because they care about the specific organization. They're really trying to advance their values through their giving, and that's the way they see themselves as being able to make change in the world. So as we're fundraising from our small dollar donors, we want to give them the credit for the work the organization can do. Those aren't our victories, they're actually our donors' victories. When we win a campaign, it's because people gave us $5 out of their Social Security checks, and they deserve the credit for that. That's not ours alone.
So how do you share that specifically? How does Friends of the Earth share that impact?
Yeah, we always use a lot of you language in all of our messaging, so we never say Friends of the Earth did this, we say you did this. We want to make sure the word you appears in almost every paragraph in an email whenever we possibly can.
So you saved this, or you changed the law.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else you can, how else? How often do you communicate with, do you share the impact with somebody who, let's say, gives 3 times a year? Is it only at those 3 times?
Not at all.
Okay.
We always want to be intertwining some impact messaging in every communication that we send. For Friends of the Earth, that's about an email a day for most people.
Oh, wow.
So every single day, just reinforcing that narrative of you can change laws, you can change policies, you're empowered to do these things. Whether you're giving or signing a petition or making a phone call to your decision maker, it's all part of the same set of impact methods, so it doesn't really matter what way they're engaging with us. We always want to be rewarding the impact that they're having.
Okay, so someone makes these donations are typically online. I'm assuming we're talking about small dollar because they're coming from emails. All right, so they get an immediate acknowledgement. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
And then what would be the next? Suppose it was a $25 gift. They get an immediate thank you. When's the next time? Would it be the next day? You said every day. Is there any suspension of mailing for a couple days to give the person a break, or would they hear from you day 2? They're going to get some impact message.
They could get something 2 hours later, even if something happens out in the world and we need to go to them and ask them to respond again. For example, if somebody gives to help stop drilling in the Arctic and then 2 hours later Trump releases his next Arctic drilling plan, we're not going to hold back that information from our supporters. We're going to share that with them even if they just donated and ask them to
2 hours
again.
earlier they gave $25. Yeah. You'll ask them to give again?
We may not ask them to give again, but we would ask them to take action in some way, maybe to volunteer, get involved with us in some way. Yeah.
Make a call to the legislator or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How about another? Well, honesty. Well, you said honesty. I mean, I don't have to flesh out honesty, do we? I mean, I think it's pretty well understood. Don't lie to your supporters. Don't lie to your potential supporters. Don't lie to anyone. I think that's just I don't think we have to go any further with that. We got lots of time together, so we're still talking about basic principles of a successful campaign. You want to stick with you? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so
Carrie?
I think you touched on it a little bit, Sarah, but with urgency and just making sure that when you're asking people to give, it's relevant in that moment, and you're convincing them that by giving it will have an immediate impact. So, like, for example, if a bill is moving through the legislature right now, like, that's why your contribution matters today, not tomorrow, not 2 weeks from now, and just constantly reinforcing that, like, this is the moment to engage, and if you want to have the maximum impact, now is the time.
Yeah. Okay. Sara, another principle?
Yeah, sure. And Carrie touched on this before too. We really want to focus on building what I call horizontal relationships with our supporters. A lot of times nonprofits and organizations across the board say, we have this solution, chip in if you want. Like, we have this very big idea, we've got it covered, but chip in to help us.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is kind of take that messaging and move away from it. So it's actually really saying to supporters, like, here's this issue. Let's fight on it together. We cannot do it alone.
Instead of you helping us do it.
Right.
Same. Yeah.
Right. And it's very, very easy in email marketing to literally put help us in every single email ask. What we want to do is we want to eliminate the help us, and we actually really want to bring the supporter in. And I was telling folks during our presentation, there's a study in the UK about horizontal relationships and sustainable giving, and people who are asked by their peers are actually twice as likely to give, which is really, really incredible. And that's just something that we really want people to focus on. For writing emails that sound like they're coming from your parents or like a vertical relationship, you probably want to stay away from that. You probably want to make sure that it's really coming from like a respected peer.
Like peer to peer.
Right.
Okay.
And that's where that is from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Should we just keep ticking off principles of success? I mean, I imagine that was a lot of your session. Have you done your session yet? I'm assuming.
Yeah,
we
have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're on the downside then. Okay. I'm assuming a lot of your session was best practices, basic principles for success in this thing, in this small dollar campaign. Give us another one. Go ahead, Sarah. Come on, Sarah. We'll
Sure.
with you.
I mean, there's just so many.
Okay.
Another thing too is just having like really, really clear email copy and just making it very simple for people to understand.
Does that include short?
Well, it depends.
Okay.
In email, we always say it depends. You should always like test. But basically making sure that the average person spends 11.6 seconds reading your email, which is actually pretty long compared to in the past, but it's still 11.6 seconds. So just making sure that your email copy is super, super clear. Your asks are super clear. Your supporter is not left wondering what they can do in that moment to drive the whole mission and the whole organization forward.
A lot of times I'll see an email that has text wrapped around an action box in the upper right.
Right.
So the text starts on the left, but if you want to just cut right to the chase,
Yeah.
there's the language of the petition that we're asking you to sign.
Right.
And you can just click there. You
Yeah.
don't have to read the text explanation if you don't want to.
Yeah, and that's accessible to everybody, right? Like some readers like to just immediately go and say, okay, I know what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then some people really like just taking their time
Some
and
people want
reading.
the background.
Some people really
will
do.
scroll down to
Yeah.
the footnotes, the 5 footnotes down at the bottom.
Right.
Okay.
And being open to all levels of readership is really important too. We talked about in our training the power of using inclusive language and making sure that your email copy is accessible to everyone, which is also a thing that is very important in this day and age.
How do you ensure accessibility?
There's a couple of different ways to do that. Carrie actually mentioned a really good point with her email program, which I'll let her talk more about. But usually people are 65 and over on email lists. So Carrie, I'm going to kick it off to you to talk specifically about how you made it more accessible on your list.
Yeah, so one of the things that we experimented with was font size. A lot of people think that if you're reading something on a mobile device, you want it to be clearly fitting the screen, but we actually found that for our older audiences, we needed 18-point font, even on mobile.
Oh, wow.
Which, if you think about what that looks like on a computer, it's huge. On your phone, that's 3 lines can fit in the screen, but we tested it, and it just universally worked better.
Okay. How about, what else do you test? What are some others? I know you can start with subject line, who signs.
We test
Tick them off.
everything.
Name some other things besides everything.
So in one email,
Flush out
for example, if we're sending a fundraising message, we might test the subject line, we might test the content, we might test the language on the donation page, both in the headline of the donation page and in the body of the donation page, and we might test the ask amounts all at the same time. And so we really want to test every single piece of the experience all the time. Those are the results that we're going to get back in a matter of minutes. We also might be doing some kind of long-term testing, like, for example, what happens if we segment based on highest previous gift. We might need to test that for 6 months to really understand the impact that'll have. So while we're doing all of this testing in the moment, we're also have this backdrop of the long-term testing that we're running behind the scenes.
Did you say you have 1.8 million, or it was 1.3?
1.8.
Okay, so you've got the luxury of having large numbers that you can test with. Suppose a list is only 10,000. Can you still do A/B testing with a 10,000 person list?
Yeah, what I like to tell people is don't worry about getting statistical significance or being like a data purist. It's fine. The goal really for like email is just to improve your email content so that you can raise more money. That's really all it takes. I mean, you can segment off a 10,000 list into like 2,000 lists for subject lines and just see if there's a bump or not. It really doesn't have to be that complicated. And again, like our goal for me, for ActBlue and for Carrie is like to make in this presentation is really to like take like the fear out of email and actually make it more.
For radio listeners too.
Right, exactly.
Don't leave them out.
Oh, that's true.
You didn't say them. You said it for everybody. You said the whole universe. You didn't mention nonprofit radio listeners.
Right, there.
All right. Go ahead. I cut you off.
No, it's okay. No, but really to like take the fear out of email and to take the fear out of fundraising. This is something that anyone can do.
Yeah. Okay. That would be a good wrap-up point, but we have another 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Because this is a half-hour segment.
Yeah.
And so I'm not letting you off the hook. So that would be a good wrap. We'll come back to it later.
Okay.
In about 10 minutes. So let's keep talking about, I don't know, testing. Is there anything more we can say about testing? Either of you, Carrie, Sarah, anything more you want to add about testing?
I think the big thing is look for the stuff that's going to have the greatest impact. So, you might test 2 versions of your content, but if it's only 1 line difference, then you're probably going to see a really small change as a result of that, as opposed to completely rewriting the email. You'll probably see a much bigger change. And it's not really that much more investment of time to create the much more different version. And the results that you get will just be that much more valuable. So we really look for the places that we can make those radical improvements, or something will just radically fail, but then at least we know.
You know.
Rather than constantly testing around the margins.
Okay. Test for significance. What have you found about who signs an email? Do you have signers to your email?
Yes.
Now, of course, this is unique. I understand this is unique to Friends of the Earth. These results, your results may vary, but what has Friends of the Earth found for who signs? What's successful?
Yeah, so we test it in 2 places. One is the sender, and one is who actually has their name at the bottom of the text. We have found that it makes absolutely no difference whose name is at the bottom of the text, but the sender can make a really huge difference. For us, the organization's name is usually the winner, so coming from Friends of the Earth beats coming from our president's name. But the thing that actually wins the most is just like a totally random like climate alert or bee action, something that is about the issue rather than about the organization or an individual even.
That's as a sender?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay, so we've exhausted testing. We feel like we've said everything.
I think we're good.
Was there more? Anything more we want to add about testing principles?
Yeah, I think it's just important for all testing. It's really like optimizing your content, optimizing your ask amounts, and it's just a continual thing. Having 1 test per email is probably a good place to start. And again, really anybody can do this.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue with our basic principles then. Go ahead. Keep going, Sarah.
Cool. Another basic principle. Trying to think. I mean, there's just so many. We went through so many. Trying to think.
All right, let's get Carrie.
Yeah,
you got one in your mind?
I think like relevance is super important. Like, what do your supporters actually care about? It's probably not the same thing that your organization's leadership or even your organization's staff really care about. So try to think about it from your supporters' perspective. Like, what is it that makes them get excited about, in our example, environmental protection? Like, what are the things that are their core values, and how do you speak to those things? Like, it's probably not the amendment to the budget bill that's passing through the House tonight. That's probably not what it is.
Thinking about. Okay.
Right.
How do you find that out? How do you know what your supporters supporters are interested in?
So I think some of it comes from just listening to the different staff at the organization who interact with supporters. If you have people who work in the community, like if you're a service organization, then get their stories, go out on a site visit with them. For us, we always talk to our donor services staff who answer the phone from donor calls. Not necessarily the major donor calls, but the small dollar donors who might give through direct mail or other channels who actually call the office to give us feedback. That can just give a really interesting perspective on how people are interacting with us. And then even things like social media or people who hit reply on your mass email, you know, it's not data driven, but it can kind of guide some of your thinking and get you out of the bubble.
So these are folks who call probably to complain about something.
Sometimes.
I'm guessing.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, right. But you're able to turn that call around first by satisfying, hearing all the principles we talked, validating their concern, apologizing, fixing it, and then you can get information from them about what it is that motivates them around Friends of the Earth's work.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So staff is all trained to do that.
Yep.
It doesn't just happen. Yeah,
It doesn't just happen.
Staff is intentionally trained, let's get some information while we've got these people on the phone and they're feeling good. You familiar with the service recovery paradox?
I'm not.
No, okay. That's because we were talking about people calling and complaining. A person will be more committed to a brand if there's been a problem and it got solved than if there was never a problem, because they got the opportunity to be heard. They had the opportunity to interact with staff, and the problem presumably gets solved. So they'll be more committed than the person who never has a problem.
Right.
I think that's why it's a paradox. Interesting. Okay. More principles. Go ahead. Sarah passed last time, so now I'm passing her. So Carrie, you give another one since we're with you. And then we'll come back to Sarah. Not that we're never going back, but she passed up her turn, so you get two.
I think if you're talking about small donor fundraising, you always want to make sure that you're giving people the right ask at the right time. So if someone's capable of giving $30, don't ask them for $5. If someone's capable of giving $5, don't ask them for $250.
Yeah.
All of our systems have data on, or you can do some analytics to find out what each individual donor's highest previous gift is, or if they've never given before, you can test into what makes the most sense. But you want to be talking to people and meet them where they're at rather than trying to massively oversell them in a way that isn't accessible.
Okay. Before I ask you for a principle, I'm going to ask you, Sarah. How does one become an email? So you're a director of email.
Yeah.
That's not a major.
No, you don't go to college for that.
Yeah. How do you work your way into that?
Yeah, sure. So I graduated college and I worked as a field organizer for then Senator Kay Hagan. So I really liked.
What state is Kay Hagan?
North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Southern.
Oh, I should know that.
South.
Oh, I own 2 homes in North Carolina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Pinehurst and Emerald Isle.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I'm not from there.
Yeah.
So I didn't know Kay Hagan's North Carolina. Okay.
Yeah.
Now it's Burr and Tillis.
Oh, right.
I know the current.
Yeah, we lost.
Knuckleheads. I know the current guys.
Yeah.
But I didn't know her. Okay.
Yeah.
Kay
So graduated, field organizer. I loved talking to people, but I didn't think that knocking on doors was going to be my life's calling and my life's work.
Okay.
So ended up getting into digital fundraising just because it was just, you could talk to people at a massive scale, which is really empowering and very cool. It uses both sides of your brain, so you can be creative, but of course we've talked a lot about testing during this time, so you kind of have
There's
both.
There's a science to it also.
Right. So I've spent 4 to 5 years in political fundraising. So I've worked for the DSCC, I work for Revolution.
Wait, what's DSCC?
Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I've worked for Revolution Messaging as a consultant there, and I was formerly the deputy email director at the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, where we had a multi-million-dollar program, and now I'm at ActBlue. So I've been very fortunate to have really great female mentors and work on female teams, and so I credit them a lot to where I'm at today. And there is a lot of space for women to be in email. There's a lot of space for young people to be in email, and there's a lot of space for people who haven't really been involved in email to start.
I was with a panel yesterday, which was called, I don't have it, I left them back in the hotel, yesterday's notes, but it was called Grit. It was female technologists.
Yeah.
Did you go to that? You're nodding.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't say, okay. But it was Grit, how to be a successful female in technology, something like that.
Right.
Very good panel. Very good panel. Carrie, how'd you work your way into being an email scientist?
Yeah, so I started answering our phone line for donor services, which is why I feel so strongly about this now.
Oh my God, you've been your whole career is Friends of the Earth?
Yep, so far.
Okay.
And basically, I discovered that I really wanted to have an impact on the issues I cared about, but I didn't really want to be dressing up in a suit and going and meeting with people on the Hill. I really wanted to be out in the field talking to real human beings. And email was just the right mix of those things where I could ask people for money to help further the mission, or I could give people the tools to lobby their own elected officials, or whatever the action mechanism was. It was all at my fingertips, and I never have to put on a suit, so that doesn't suck.
Okay, it doesn't. Okay. Okay, Sarah, back to you. Practice, best practice. Did you think of one since the last time?
Yeah, I
Please.
think. Yeah. So back to what Carrie was saying about multi-channel, about talking to other people within the organization. I think that is really, really important. Usually, when I start a new organization, or like every 3 months, I'll talk to just different folks, just to get some authenticity and authentic voice. I mean, people are craving authenticity in email, so that's a really good way to do it. Another thing and another question that I got during the panel was direct mail and email, and how do those two things relate, and can they coexist? My personal opinion is yes, they absolutely can. You can use direct mail pieces in email, vice versa. You can send email to direct mail folks too for a multi-touch. So that's another thing too that I think nonprofits can really explore. It's really not one or the other. You can have both.
I had someone on a panel yesterday who said that their donors love getting, they thank them for direct mail letters that say thank you for an email gift, for an online gift.
Yeah, and it's a really good way to keep your sustainers like really happy, and that's like your big donor base.
Okay. How often would you thank sustainers?
As often as I can.
After every gift? Every month?
Well, usually you can do it in personalization. So you can say like, hey, you've made like a $3 monthly donation, and literally you just put an M dash and say thank you. It can be that simple, or it can be like so extreme that you write like a handwritten thank you note and send it in the mail. So it just depends on what your capacity is. But just giving, those donors a sense of like appreciation is super important.
Right. Do you want to touch them at every monthly donation? One way or the other?
Yeah, well, that's my personal belief. I think people, they pretty much know that they're doing a monthly donation, and actually reminding people that they gave a monthly donation. For us, I haven't seen any drop-off whatsoever. I know a lot of people are I'm nervous about reminding people that they have a monthly donation, but I think for us, it's part of, again, that honesty, authenticity, and being upfront with people and where they stand.
I've heard it both ways. I've heard the set it and forget it, don't remind them. But then you risk when the card expires or it gets compromised, they decide, I've had enough. I don't really hear from them very often. But there are two sides to that argument.
Right.
Okay. I'll tell you what, Carrie, I'm going to let you wrap it up. We got just 30 seconds or so left. Give us some motivation about small dollar donation campaigns.
Yeah, I think for Friends of the Earth, it's really been a game changer for us. Every dollar you raise online has the potential to be unrestricted, so it means that you can run the programs that you want to run as an organization without being required to do what a major donor wants you to do or what a foundation wants you to do. You can be much more flexible.
Yeah, totally unrestricted.
And you are empowering human beings in the real world to be a part of your cause and advance the mission that you care about. And there's just no better way to do that than building those relationships online where people, in the 21st century, that's where they're at. So we meet them where they are.
Awesome. Thank you. That was Carrie Mann. She's Deputy Director of Digital Membership and Advocacy at Friends of the Earth. And also Sara Kerrigan, Email Director at ActBlue. Thank you each very much.
Thanks so much, Tony.
much.
Real pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for being with Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of 19NTC. All of our 19NTC interviews are brought to you as from our partners at ActBlue, free fundraising tools that help nonprofits make an impact. Thanks for being with us.